Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Prescott and I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to start Chapter 9, Lifespan Development, sorry I had a wrong slide there, from the OpenStax Psychology 2E online textbook. So let's go ahead and get started. So lifespan development studies how you change as well as how you remain the same over the course of your life. So what is lifespan development? Developmental psychologists study lifelong development across three domains. Physical development, so growth and changes in the body and brain, senses, motor skills, and health and wellness. And you have cognitive development, which is learning, attention, memory, language, thinking, reasoning, and creativity. And then psychosocial development, which are emotions, personality, and social relationships. So, normative approach. What is normal development? Normative psychologists have studied large numbers of children to determine norms, or average ages, of when most children reach specific developmental milestones. For example, crawling, walking, speaking in sentences, starting puberty. Then you have biological milestones, such as starting puberty, are universal. Everybody goes through puberty. And social milestones, such as starting school, vary across cultures. It's not all the same. So, continuous versus discontinuous development. Developmental psychologists have different views on the processes of lifespan development. So continuous development views development as a cumulative process, gradually improving on existing skills. For example, adding inches to height each year. Now, discontinuous development views development as occurring in unique stages, so specific times or ages. So here you have continuous development from infancy to adulthood. Discontinuous development is infancy, to adulthood, but you see it's not a straight line. It's not steady slope. It goes a little variable. So, is there one course of development or many? Is development universal for all children, or is it individual depending on each child's genetics and environment? So stage theories believe that the process of development is universal. So, evidence for one course. Studies show that children from all around the world reach language milestones in a similar sequence. And then evidence for many courses. Cultural differences in childcare practices, different practices can accelerate or inhibit achievement of developmental milestones. So, here we have all children across the world love to play, whether in Florida, seen here, or South Africa, seen here. Children enjoy exploring sand, sunshine, and the sea. That's universal. Next, we have the nature versus nurture, good old nature versus nurture debate. So, of course, nature is biology and genetics, and then nurture is environment and culture. So, the nature versus nurture debate considers how our personalities and traits are the result of our genetics and biological factors and how they're shaped by our environment. So, why are siblings sometimes so different? Are adopted children more like their biological or adopted parents? And is intelligence inherited? Is it shaped by our learning experiences, or is it a combination of both? These questions can be answered by looking at the interaction between both nature and nurture, usually in twin and adoption studies. Both nature and nurture are important in development, but psychologists debate the relative contributions of each. So, here we have theories of development. You have the psychosexual theory, psychosocial, cognitive, and the theory of moral development. So, going on, the psychosexual theory, which is Freud. Sigmund Freud believed that childhood experiences shape our personalities and behaviors as adults. He viewed development as discontinuous and developed stages of psychosexual development. Freud believed lack of proper nurturance and parenting during a stage could lead to a child becoming stuck/fixated in that stage. And he claimed that children's pleasure-seeking urges are focused on different erogenous zones at each of the 5 stages of development. So, you have oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. Continuing on, we have the psychosocial theory, Erikson. So, Erikson emphasizes the social nature of development, and he argues that personality development takes place across the lifespan, not just in childhood, and based on his belief that social interactions affect our sense of self, so ego identity. In each stage of Erikson's theory, there's a psychosocial task that we must master in order to feel a sense of competence, and there are 8 stages total. So, here are those 8 stages of Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. So, first stage is trust versus mistrust, which is 0 to 1 years. Trust or mistrust that basic needs, such as nourishment and affection, will be met. Stage 2 is autonomy versus shame/doubt, which is 1 to 3 years, and develop a sense of independence in many tasks. 3 is initiative versus guilt. 3 to 6 years takes initiative on some activities and may develop guilt when unsuccessful or boundaries are overstepped. 4, we have industry versus inferiority. 7 to 11 years, 7-11, develop self-confidence and abilities when competent or sense of inferiority when not. 5, we have identity versus confusion, so 12 to 18 years, and experiment with and develop identity and roles. 6 is intimacy versus isolation, 19 to 29 years, establish intimacy and relationship with others. 7, generativity versus stagnation, 30 to 64 years, so contribute to society and be part of a family. And finally, we have 8, integrity versus despair, 65 plus, assesses and makes sense of life and meaning of contributions. So, going on, we have the cognitive theory by Piaget, I can never say his name right, Piaget. He focused on children's cognitive growth and theorized that cognitive abilities develop through specific stages. Piaget believed children develop schemata, or concepts used to categorize and interpret information to help them understand the world. When children learn new information, they adjust their schemata through assimilation and accommodation. Now, assimilation incorporates information into existing schemata, while accommodation changes schemata based on that new information. So assimilation, you're incorporating that information, and accommodation, you're changing your schemata based on the new information you received. So here we have Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So ages 0 to 2, it's the sensory motor stage, and it is the world experienced through senses and actions. Now there are some developmental issues for each of these stages. So object permanence, understanding that even if something's out of sight, it still exists, and stranger anxiety. So, your 0 to 2-year-old has trouble, that's why you give you peekaboo, they have no object permanence. Once they can't see your face, they assume it's gone. So, second stage, age 2 to 6, we have the pre-operational stage. You use words and images to represent things, but lack logical reasoning. Now, developmental issues include pretend play, egocentrism, which is unable to take the perspective of others, they can only view from their point of view, and language development. Stage 3, we have age 7 to 11, this concrete operational stage, and you understand concrete events and analogies logically, and you perform arithmetical operations. Now, issues are, conversation and mathematical transformations. And finally, we have the formal operational stage at age 12 and up. It's formal operations. You can utilize abstract thinking, and some issues include abstract logic and moral reasoning. Now we have the theory of moral reasoning here. So Lawrence Kohlberg identified 3 stages of moral development, which is learning to discern right from wrong. So at level 1, you have your pre-conventional morality. It has 2 stages. So stage 1, obedience and punishment, behavior driven by avoiding punishment. And stage 2 is individual interest, behavior driven by self-interest and rewards. Level 2 is conventional morality. We have stage 3, which is interpersonal, behavior driven by social approval, and authority, behavior driven by obeying authority and conforming to social order. And then we have level 3, which is stage 5 and 6, social contract, behavior driven by balance of social order and individual rights. And stage 6 is universal ethics, behavior driven by internal moral principles. So, Kohlberg identified 3 levels of moral reasoning: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional, each level associated with increasingly complex stages of moral development, as we just went through. Next, we have the stages of development, and we will actually go through that in the next video. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it at least a little entertaining and educational, and I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome back to Succinct. My name is Prescott, and here again at Succinct, Succinct Psychology. And today we're going to continue going through Chapter 9, Development. Last time we spoke about some different theory, like the cognitive theory, psychosocial, psychosexual, whether or not development is continuous or discontinuous. So we're going to continue where we left off. We left off on stages of development. So you have prenatal stage, infancy to childhood, adolescence, emerging adulthood, and adulthood. So let's start off with prenatal development. So in prenatal development, you have the germinal stage, which is weeks 1 to 2, and conception occurs when sperm fertilizes an egg and forms a zygote, or a one-cell structure. Now, mitosis is a process of cell division. The zygote divides and cells become more specialized, forming organs and body parts. Now, the embryonic stage is weeks 3 through 8. After the zygote has 150 cells, it travels down the fallopian tubes and implants itself in the lining of the uterus. The zygote is now an embryo, or a multicellular organism, and organs begin to function, so heart begins to beat, and basic structures develop that will become the head, chest, and abdomen. Now, the placenta is a structure connected to the uterus that provides nourishment and oxygen from the mother to the embryo via the umbilical cord. So if you guys were wondering, how do babies breathe? Now you know. Now, prenatal development in the fetal stage is weeks 9 through 40. During the fetal stage, the baby's brain develops and the body adds size and weight until the fetus reaches full-term development. So here you start at 9 weeks, it begins, and you get to 40 weeks, full-term development. You have a whole baby now. Now, prenatal influences. Genetic and environmental factors can affect development during each prenatal stage. It is important for the mother to receive prenatal care, or medical care during pregnancy, to monitor the health of the mother and fetus. Now, teratogen, if I'm saying that correctly, is any environmental agent, biological, chemical, or physical, that causes damage to the developing embryo or fetus. Now, alcohol can cause fetal alcohol syndrome. Smoking can result in premature birth, low birth weight, stillbirths, sudden infant death syndrome. Now, drugs like heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, as well as prescription drugs, and then there's radiation, viruses, example HIV, herpes, rubella. So these are all prenatal influences. So we have here fetal alcohol syndrome. It is a collection of birth defects associated with heavy consumption of alcohol during pregnancy. Research has found alcohol to be the leading preventable cause of mental retardation in children in the U.S. So physical effects: small head size, abnormal facial features, so see low nasal bridge, small eye openings, short nose, thin upper lip, underdeveloped jaw, smooth philtrum, flat midface, epichantal folds. So this is fetal alcohol syndrome from YouTube. Now, so again, those are the physical side effects. Now, cognitive could be poor judgment, poor impulse control, higher rates of ADHD, learning issues, and lower IQ scores. So, newborns. Newborn reflexes include our inborn automatic responses to particular forms of stimulation, and they help the newborn survive. Now, a rooting reflex is the baby turns its head towards something that touches its cheek. So if you ever touch a baby's cheek, it'll turn its head towards that. Sucking reflex is when they suck on objects placed in the mouth. Grasping reflex, cling to objects placed in hands. And Moro reflex, baby spreads arms and pulls them back in when they are startled / feel like they are falling. Sensory abilities, not yet fully developed at birth. Vision is the least developed sense, so they can't see too good. They prefer human voices, specifically their mothers, over strangers, and can distinguish between the smell of their mother and others. Now, physical development and growth occurs rapidly during infancy, but it slows down at around ages 4 to 6. Girls have a growth spurt at age 8 to 9 to about 12. Now, nervous system, the blooming period. Neural pathways form thousands of new connections during infancy and toddlerhood. And the pruning period is neural connections are reduced during childhood and adolescence to allow the brain to function more efficiently. So the size of the brain increases rapidly, especially the frontal lobe during ages 3 to 6. And 55% of adults size at age 2, 55% of adult size at age 2, 90% of adult size at age 6. I'm sorry, I tripped myself up there. It's saying that they're 55% of adult size at age 2 and they're 90 at age 6. Now, motor development is motor skills, our ability to move our bodies and manipulate objects that occurs in an orderly sequence and becomes more advanced. Now, fine motor skills focus on the muscles in our fingers, toes, and eyes and enable coordination of small actions. for example, gripping a pencil. Now, gross motor skills focus on large muscle groups that control arms and legs and involve larger movements, for example, bouncing and running. Going on, we have cognitive development. So Piaget thought that children's ability to understand objects develops slowly as a child matures and interacts with the environment. Today, developmental psychologists think Piaget was incorrect. Now, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that right now. 1987. Very young children understand objects and how they work long before they have experience with those objects. In Byler-Gion's study, infants observed a truck roll down an unobstructed track. So, figure A, and then figure B, roll down an unobstructed track with an obstruction, box, behind it, and C, roll down and pass through what appears to be an obstruction. Infants spent more time looking at C, suggesting that they knew solid objects cannot pass through each other. So that's Byler-Gion. Sound like an alien name. Now, cognitive development, there are cognitive milestones. So, at 6 to 9 months, they can shake their head no. 9 to 12, respond to verbal requests, for example, wave, bye-bye. 8 months, they understand object permanence. So again, I think I said that in the last video, but children before this don't have object permanence. If you put something under, you hide something, you know, like you have a toy or something, and you put it around the corner, or hide it with a blanket, baby's going to assume that that thing no longer exists. You blinked out of existence. And then toddlers, they understand someone will come back when they leave the room and will look in appropriate places when asked to find objects. So kind of like what I just said. 3 to 5 years, they learn to count, name colors, know their name and age, can make small decisions, understand basic time concepts and sequencing, and enjoy pretend play. And they can think, because they can think symbolically. And they become more curious. They always ask why, and they develop theory of mind. If you've ever had a conversation with a 3 to 5-year-old, you will know, like, they'll ask you something, and be like, oh, well, because of this, why? Well, because of this, why? And it just gets to the point where you question your own existence, because they just ask you, like, why are you anything? So 6 to 11, thinking becomes more logical and organized. They understand past, present, and future, and can plan and work towards goals, understand cause and effect relationships, and basic math skills. And their attention span is limited until approximately age 11. So, because they understand luck and fairness, children in middle and late childhood, ages 6 to 11 years old, are able to follow rules for games. So, football, basketball, baseball. Now, psychosocial development, attachment. So, psychosocial development occurs as children form relationships, interact with others, and understand and manage their feelings. Now, attachment is a long-standing connection or bond with others. Forming health attachments is one of the main psychosocial milestones of infancy. So how do parent and infant attachment bonds form? How does neglect affect these bonds? What accounts for children's attachment differences? And the most influential studies conducted to answer these questions were by Harry Harlow, John Bowlby, and Mary Ainsworth. So here we have a nice picture. Mutually enjoyable interactions promote the mother-infant bond. Well, I don't think that's that kid's mother, but you get the idea. So, attachment. Harlow separated newborn monkeys from their mothers and presented them with 2 surrogate mothers. One made out of wire mesh and could dispense milk. One made from cloth did not dispense milk. Monkeys spent time clinging to the cloth monkey and only went to the wire monkey for food. Results suggest that feelings of comfort and security are the critical components to maternal-infant bonding. Going on with attachment, we have Bowlby, his attachment theory, define attachment as the affectional bond / tie that an infant forms with the mother. And the bond must be made with primary caregiver in order to have a normal social and emotional development. Saw attachment as an all or nothing process. You're either attached or you're not. Now, secure base is the parental presence that gives the child a sense of safety as he explores his surroundings. And requirements for a healthy attachment are: 1, caregiver must be responsive to the child's physical and emotional needs, and the caregiver and child must engage in mutually enjoyable interactions. And then we have Mary Ainsworth in 1970, do children differ in the way they bond, and if so, why? Ainsworth looked to answer this question through a procedure known as the strange situation. Now, strange situation is when a mother, caregiver, the caregiver, and infant are placed in a room together with toys. Stranger enters the room and mother leaves. After a few minutes, mother returns to the room to comfort the child. Through the strange situation, Ainsworth identified 3 styles of attachment. A 4th was later identified. So you have secure attachment, avoidant, resistant, and disorganized. So that is where we will stop the video today. We will go through the different types of attachment that Ainsworth discovered in the next video. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and I hope you found the video enjoyable and you learned something today, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to continue going through Chapter 9 from the OpenStax Online 2E textbook, Development. Last time we talked about physical development, cognitive development, and then psychosocial development. We spoke about Harlow's theories, Bowlby, attachment theory, and then Ainsworth, her discovering through the strange situation experiment, she discovered 3 styles of attachment, and a 4th one was later discovered. So today we're going to continue where we left off right here and go through each of those 4 types of attachment. So, secure attachment. Child uses the parent as a secure base from which to explore. The child was distressed when mother left and happy to see them when they returned. And remember, during the stranger situation experiment, they would have the mother and child in a room. Stranger would come in, mother would leave, and then come back later to comfort the child. So in that experiment, the secure attachment, the child uses the parents as a secure base from which to explore. The child was distressed when mother left and was happy to see them when they returned. Common when caregivers are sensitive and responsive to needs. You have avoided, unresponsive to parent, does not use the parent as a secure base, and does not care if parent leaves. Child was slow to show positive reaction when mother returned. Common when caregivers are insensitive and inattentive to needs. So basically not a very good mother. Then you have resistant, show clingy behavior, but then reject mother's attempts to interact with them. Child did not explore the toys, became extremely disturbed and angry when mother left, and were difficult to comfort when mother returned. Common when caregiver is inconsistent with level of response. And disorganized, show odd behavior around caregiver. Behaved oddly when mother left, froze, ran around erratically, tried to run away when mother returned. Common when child has been abused. So that's not good. Anyways, next we have self-concept or self-awareness. Development of a positive sense of self is the main psychosocial milestone of childhood. Children with a positive self-concept tend to be more confident, more independent, do better in school, and are more willing to try new activities. By 18 months, a baby can recognize themselves in the mirror. By 24 to 46 months, they can recognize themselves in a photo. Self-concept and social behavior. Children display increased social behavior after establishing a self-concept. So, age 2 to 4, they enjoy playing with other children and can label themselves as a boy or girl. Through play, children explore and come to understand gender roles. Now, at age 4, they cooperate and share and can initiate tasks and carry out plans. And by age 6, they can identify themselves in terms of group membership. Now, we have parenting styles. So the development of a healthy self-concept can depend on parenting style. Baumrin, 1971, came up with 4. There's the authoritative style. Parents give children reasonable demands and consistent limits, express warmth and affection, and listen to the child's point of view. Authoritarian styles, parents place a high value on conformity and obedience, are often rigid, and express little warmth to the child. 3 is permissive. Parents make few demands and rarely use punishment. And uninvolved. Parents are indifferent, uninvolved, and sometimes referred to as neglectful. They do not respond to the child's needs and make relatively few demands. So if you guys want to put which one of these styles your parents were using, I'll tell you mine. My parents were the authoritative style. So if you're interested, let me know what style your parents were as you were growing up. So next we have temperament. Parenting style can depend on the temperament of a child. Now, temperament are the innate traits that influence how one thinks, behaves, and reacts with the environment. Easy temperament, positive emotions, adapt well to change, and capable of regulating emotions, are more likely to elicit warm and responsive parenting. Now, difficult temperament, It's negative emotions, difficulty adapting to change and regulating emotions, and this is more likely to evoke irritation and cause parents to withdraw. So obviously parents want to have a child with easy temperament over difficult, because it's not fun being difficult. Adolescence. Peers are primary influence on our development in adolescence of your friends. Next, we have physical development. Puberty, adrenarche, maturing of the adrenal glands, gonadarche, maturing of the sex glands. Secondary sexual characteristics develop, breasts and hips in girls, facial hair and deepened voice in boys. Menarche is the beginning of menstrual periods, usually around 12 to 13 years old, and spermarche, first ejaculation, around 13, 14 years old. There is growth spurts in both sexes. Girls reach their adult height by 60, and boys reach their adult height by 17. So if you've ever noticed girls and boys at the same age, a lot of those girls tend to be taller because they grow a little faster. Now, physical development. Brain growth continues into the early 20s. The development of the frontal lobe in particular is important during this stage. The frontal lobe is responsible for judgment, impulse control, and planning. It may explain why adolescents engage in increased risk-taking behaviors and emotional outbursts. So we have cognitive development. Teenage thinking is characterized by the ability to reason logically and solve hypothetical problems, such as how to design, plan, and build a structure. Some researchers believe this is due to an increase in mental capacity, development of new skills, and some researchers believe this is due to increases in processing speed and efficiency or improvements to existing skills. So, cognitive empathy, or theory of mind, is the ability to take the perspective of others and feel concern for others, so putting yourself in somebody else's boots. It increases in adolescence and is an important part of social problem solving and conflict avoidance. If you can visualize yourself as somebody else and their point of view, you're more likely to avoid getting into conflict because you can understand their point of view. Continuing on, we have psychosocial development, some more of this. Adolescents refine their sense of self as they relate to others. Who am I? Who do I want to be? They may adopt the values and roles that parents expect for them and may develop identities that are in opposition to their parents but align with a peer group. Peer relationships become a central focus in adolescents' lives. According to Erikson, adolescents are in the identity versus role confusion stage. Teens may experiment while they figure out their identity. Now we have parent-child relationships. So they are warm, healthy parent-child relationships associated with better grades and fewer school behavior problems. Up next, we have emerging adulthood is a relatively newly defined period of lifespan development and is 18 years to mid-20s. So I guess I'm in emerging adulthood right now. And identity exploration is focused on work and love. So why are people taking longer to grow up? It is a product of Western culture in current times. People are living longer, allowing them extra time to start a career and family. Higher levels of education are required for careers, and higher cultural value placed on taking time to explore options. We're not in a giant rush to grow up. So physical development. Early adulthood, 20 to 40s, physical abilities are at their peak. Middle adulthood, 40s, 60s, your physical decline is gradual, skin loses elasticity, which causes wrinkles. Your visual acuity decreases, women experience menopause, men and women both tend to gain weight, and hair begins to turn gray. Now, late adulthood, 60s plus, skin continues to get wrinkly, reaction time slows further, muscle strength diminishes further, smell, taste, hearing, and vision all decline. Physical declines of middle and late adulthood can be minimized with proper exercise, nutrition, and an active lifestyle. So you can keep those kind of declines to a minimum. Now we have cognitive development, and cognitive abilities remain steady throughout early and middle adulthood. You have crystallized intelligence, information, skills, and strategies gathered through experience remains steady or improves, and then fluid intelligence, information processing abilities, reasoning, and memory begins to decline. Cognitive activities such as playing mahjong, chess, or other games can keep you mentally fit and delay cognitive decline. The same is true for solo pastimes like reading and completing crossword puzzles. And next we have psychosocial development. I keep saying that, I should stop saying that. Theorists believe that as we age, we need to continue to have meaning in our lives. Many adults define themselves by their job or relationships with family. So employment and well-being. Job satisfaction is closely tied to work that involves contact with other people, is interesting, provides opportunities for advancement, and allows you some independence. Next, we have relationships and well-being. So positive influences on well-being include having a stable marriage, and having children, which is initially stressful but rewarding later, seeing them grow up. So, socio-emotional... Oh, that's weird. Oh, sorry, my mouse froze up on me. Socio-emotional selective theory. As we get older, our social support and friendships dwindle in number but remain as close, if not more close, than our earlier years. And we have the bad part, death and dying. Culture and individual backgrounds influence how we view death. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 1969, came up with the 5 stages of grief. First denial, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, and finally acceptance. So we have some figures here. Cemetery, scattering ashes, pyre. So different cultures, societies, and religions have varying practices surrounding death. For example, people's bodies may be buried in the cemetery, like I said, figure A, cremated and buried at sea in the U.S. Navy ceremony, or cremated, such as in this Hindu ceremony in Bali. And that's a wrap, everybody, of Chapter 9. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology. I hope you found these videos interesting and educational. And if you would like to, please leave some comments. If you have any questions or would like to start a discussion or just give some, tips on how to improve these videos for you guys, I'd be happy to hear it. Again, my name is Prescott, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Prescott, and I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to start Chapter 10, Motivation and Emotion, from the online OpenStax Psychology 2E textbook. So, without further ado, let's get going. So, motivation and emotion. Emotions can change in an instant, especially in response to an unexpected event. Surprise, fear, anger, and sadness are some immediate emotions that people experience in the aftermath of the April 15, 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. You can see right there, not a pleasant experience. So, what are emotions? What causes them? What motivated some bystanders to immediately help others while other people ran for safety? So, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So motivation is the wants or needs that direct behavior toward a goal. Intrinsic motivation arises from internal factors, so obviously your own internal. Behaviors are performed because they bring a sense of personal satisfaction. Now, extrinsic motivation arises from external factors. Behaviors are performed in order to receive something from others. So intrinsic motivation from within, autonomy, mastery, purpose, those are your motivations. Extrinsic motivation is compensation, or you don't want to get punished, or you want a reward. So, over-justification of that effect. Intrinsic motivation is diminished when extrinsic motivation is given. Research suggests that when something we love to do, like icing cakes, becomes our job, our intrinsic and extrinsic motivations to do it may change. Once we are receiving an extrinsic motivation, like being paid, we may lose the motivation to do it just for enjoyment. Other research suggests the opposite, that certain types of reinforcement, such as praise, can increase intrinsic motivation. So, explanations of differences. 1. Type of reinforcement. Tangible rewards appear to decrease intrinsic motivation. Intangible rewards appear to increase motivation. And 2. Expectation of extrinsic reward. Intrinsic motivation is more likely to decrease if extrinsic reward is expected. So an outward reward is expected. So, yeah, whoops, sorry guys. All right, so instinct theory of motivation by William James. He proposed the instinct theory of motivation, asserting that behavior is driven by instincts, which aid survival. He proposed instincts included a mother's protection of her baby, the urge to lick sugar, and hunting prey. The theory received criticism for ignoring the role of learning in shaping human behavior. So here you have William James, and here you have a woman breastfeeding her child. In humans, instincts may include behaviors such as an infant's rooting or a nipple and sucking. Now, the drive theory of motivation. Drive theory proposed that the maintenance of homeostasis is important in directing behavior. Deviations from homeostasis create physiological needs, resulting in psychological drive states that direct behavior to meet the need and bring the system back to homeostasis. Emphasizes the role that habits, pattern of behavior in which we regularly engage, play in behavioral responses. So if a behavior successfully reduces the drive, we are more likely to engage in that behavior in future. So here you have a little girl eating some watermelon, sushi, and I don't know what she's eating, but it must be good. So that physiological drive state directs your motivation. So I'm guessing they're saying here motivation is they're hungry, so they're motivated to eat. Now, the arousal theory of motivation. Arousal theories assert that there's an optimal level of arousal that we all try to maintain. So if you're under-aroused, you become bored and you seek stimulation. If you're over-aroused, you engage in behaviors to reduce arousal. Research suggests that the optimal arousal level for performance is moderate arousal, so not under, not over. So here you can see the optimal level. Going from low, you have boredom or apathy, and if it's too high, you get anxious, you're overstimulated. So the concept of optimal arousal in relation to performance on a task is depicted here. Performance is maximized at the optimal level of arousal, and it tapers off during, under, and over arousal. So continuing on, Yerkes and Dodson, 1908, the optimal arousal level depends on the complexity and difficulty of the task to be performed. So the Yerkes-Dodson law says that task performance is best when arousal levels are in a middle range, with difficult tasks performed under lower levels of arousal and simple tasks being performed under higher levels of arousal. So here you can see the difficult tasks are performed under higher levels, easy tasks, yeah. Wait 1 second. Sorry. All right, self-efficacy, efficacy and social motivation. So self-efficacy, an individual's belief in her own, or his or her, I guess, own capability to complete a task. Bandura theorized that self-efficacy plays a role in motivating behavior and argues that motivation derives from expectations held about the consequences of behaviors. And beliefs about our abilities will determine what we do and goals we set for ourselves. So, social motives, need for an achievement, it drives accomplishment and performance. Your need for affiliation encourages positive interactions with each other or with others, and the need for intimacy causes us to seek deep, meaningful relationships, like having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So, if you guys remember this, we have seen this before, I believe in chapter 1, somewhere in there, somewhere early on. But this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, Abraham Maslow, in 1943, proposed a theory of motivation that spans the spectrum of motives, including biological, individual, and social. So one must satisfy lower level needs before addressing the needs in higher levels. So a person without food, water, and shelter is unlikely to be focused on relationships or what people think of them. So here you can see these are your most basic needs. Obviously you need food, water, shelter, and be warm before you can worry about safety, employment, and assets. In each level you have physiological, security, social esteem, and self-actualization. So with each, you can't get the inner fulfillment if you don't have food and water, right? And you can't be worrying about self-worth, accomplishment, and confidence if you don't have safety, employment, and assets. So that's how the hierarchy works. Next, we have hunger and eating. So first off, we have physiological mechanisms. Hunger and eating are regulated by a complex interplay of hunger and satiety, signals that are integrated in the brain. Now, before eating, you have your empty stomach, your stomach contracts, and you have hunger pangs and secretion of chemical messages that travel to the brain as a signal to initiation feeding behavior, or to initiate feeding behavior. You also have low blood glucose levels. Your pancreas and liver generate chemical signals that induce hunger to initiate the feeding behavior. Now, after eating, you have satiation, feeling of fullness and satisfaction causing eating behavior to stop. So increase in blood glucose levels after eating, your pancreas and liver send signals to shut off that hunger and eating. And food passes through gastrointestinal tract, satiety signals are sent to the brain. And fat cells release leptin, or satiety hormone. So here you have your hunger, you eat, you have satiety. Now, metabolism and body weight. Factors affecting body weight. Gene-environment interactions, the number of calories consumed versus number of calories burned in daily activity, and the metabolic rate. Now, metabolic rate is the amount of energy that is expended in a given period of time. It varies between individuals, and people with a high metabolic rate burn off calories more easily than those with lower rates of metabolism. So, regulation of body weight. The set point theory is that each individual has an ideal body weight / set point, which is resistant to change. Set point is genetically determined. Efforts to move weight significantly from the set point are resisted by compensatory changes in energy intake/expenditure, and is based on the observation that people's weight generally fluctuates within a narrow margin, but it fails to account for the influences of social and environmental factors. So I'll say that my set point is around 220 pounds. So I can lose a little weight, I can gain a little weight, but after a certain point, it's really hard for me to gain or lose weight. So if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments on what your set point is if you would like to, and if you know what it is. So, going on, obesity. So 2/3 of US adults struggle with issues related to being overweight. This chart shows how adult BMI is calculated. Individuals find their height on the y-axis, so right here, and their weight on the x-axis to determine their BMI. So having a BMI of 25 to 29.9 means you are overweight, over 30 is obese, and over 40 is morbidly obese. Now, environmental factors, as well as factors such as genetics and energy intake/expenditure, socioeconomic status, and the physical environment can contribute to obesity. So may not feel comfortable walking or biking in a neighborhood with high crime rates, which limits physical activity, and therefore you can't burn calories, you can't lose weight. And it may not be able, if you're lower income, to afford healthy food options, because a lot of times those tend to be a bit more pricey. So looking here, 6'4", my weight. Apparently I'm overweight. That's not good. Anyways, obesity. So health risks include cardiovascular disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, breast cancer, infertility, arthritis, liver disease, sleep apnea, and colon cancer. So a lot of health risks with obesity. So weight reduction is a combination of diet and exercise. Now, bariatric surgery is a gastric banding surgery, creates a small pouch of stomach, reducing the size of the stomach that can be used for digestion. So here you go, you have your esophagus leading down to your stomach, they put a band right around here, create a small stomach pouch so that you can't hold as much food in your actual stomach, so then you can't eat as much and hopefully lower your weight. Next, we have eating disorders. Now, bulimia nervosa involves engaging in binge eating behavior followed by attempts to compensate for the large amount of food consumed. Now, compensation can include vomiting, laxatives, or excessive exercise, and the health consequences can include kidney failure, heart failure, and tooth decay, since forcing yourself to vomit or using laxatives is very hard on your body. You're not supposed to be doing that after every meal. So it can jack up your kidneys, your heart. If you vomit stomach acid, it's decaying your teeth. Really not good for you. And even, too much of anything is not good for you. So even exercising all the time can cause your body to start to break down. You're putting it under too much duress. So some psychological problems include depression, anxiety, and increased risk for substance abuse. Now, anorexia nervosa is the maintenance of body weight below average through starvation and or exercise. It has people with it, I'm sorry guys, first, beginning of the day. Now, distorted body image is when they view themselves as fat even though they are not, and health consequences can include bone loss, heart failure, kidney failure, amenorrhea, or resuscitation of the menstrual period, reduced function of the gonads, and in some cases death. Now, psychological problems again include anxiety disorders, mood disorders, and substance abuse. So a good way to remember the difference between these two is bulimia. I don't know why, but makes me think of binging. Yeah, like bowl binge. So bulimia nervosa, you engage in binge eating behavior and then you try and compensate for it. Anorexia nervosa is you just starve yourself and you over-exercise, so you're underweight. Now, continuing on, Caucasian females ages 15 through 19 from Western societies are the most at-risk population. Contributing factors include that many blame the media for its messages of a thin ideal. Genetics may also predispose people to these disorders. Low self-esteem, other mental illness, life transitions, stress, experiences such as abuse and bullying. So if a slightly overweight kid gets bullied, that might cause a eating disorder. Personality types, so if they're a perfectionist, they want to be have the perfect body, so they might engage in these behaviors. And family issues. So here you can see young women in our society are inundated with images of extremely thin models. As you can see here, she's very skinny. Now, sexual behavior. So, Physiological mechanisms. So the hypothalamus plays an important role in motivated behavior, including sex. Lesions to the medial preoptic area of the hypothalamus completely disrupt a male rat's ability to engage in sexual behavior, but it does not affect sexual motivation. He will still seek to gain access to sexually receptive females. This suggests that the ability to engage in sexual behavior and the motivation to do so are mediated by different systems in the brain. In humans, disorders that involve abnormal hypothalamic function are often associated with hypogonadism, or reduced function of the gonads, and reduced sexual function. Hormones secreted by endocrine glands, testosterone, influence sexual motivation and behavior. Now, physiological mechanisms continued. We have the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens. So, these are involved in motivation for sexual behavior, but do not affect the ability to engage in it. So again, motivation and ability to engage is very different. You can still be motivated, just not able to. Now, damage in rats results in a decreased motivation to engage in sexual behavior, while ability to do so is still intact. So here, rather than decreased ability and same motivation, they just aren't motivated to engage in sexual behavior. So, Kinsey's research, and I actually saw a film about Kinsey, fun fact, and this will be the last slide that we do for this video, so I don't go too long and bore you guys. So, Kinsey's research, in response to the lack of empirically based information on sex during the late 1940s, Dr. Alfred Kinsey initiated a large-scale survey. Behaviors thought to be rare were revealed to be much more common than previously thought, and they were influential in shaping future research on human sexual behavior and motivation. So, his findings: women are as interested and experienced in sex as men, because prior to this, it was widely thought that women were not interested or experienced with sex. And both males and females masturbate without negative health consequences. And again, before these findings, very religious America was trying to tell people that it was wrong to do so. And homosexual acts are fairly common. They're not some rare abnormality. Now, Kinsey's scale used to categorize an individual's sexual orientation. So, the next video, we will continue chapter 10 here, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry, I kind of stuttered a lot there, still waking up a little bit, but I hope you guys have a great day. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a great day. Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 10 from the online OpenStax 2E textbook. My name is Prescott and I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and today we're going to continue from where we left off last time. We left off right here, Masters and Johnson's research. In the last video, if you guys didn't watch it, we went through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, motivation and emotion, motivation when it comes to eating disorders, sexual behavior. So the very last slide we did last time was we talked about Kinsey's research right here, the findings that Dr. Alfred Kinsey found about sex, and now we're going to go into Masters and Johnson's research. So they conducted a study of physiological responses during sexual behavior, observed people engaging in sexual behaviors, and measured physiological variables, example, blood pressure and respiration rate. And they also measured sexual arousal, for example, vaginal lubrication and penile tumescence. Sexual response cycle: excitement, there's 4 stages. First is excitement, the arousal phase, so erection, lubrication. 2 is plateau, increased swelling and blood flow. 2, labia minora, pre-ejaculatory fluid. Stage 3, you have orgasm, rhythmic contractions, ejaculation. And stage 4, you have resolution, so you return to unaroused state. So here we have right here the sexual response cycle as arousal goes up. So it's time, so you have excitement, it leads up, but then you can see the plateau. Orgasm goes real high up, and then when it's resolved, your sexual arousal goes back down. So sexual orientation is the emotional and erotic attraction toward another individual, a relatively stable characteristic of a person. It's not a choice. Between 3% and 10% of the adult population identifies as homosexual. So what makes someone heterosexual versus homosexual? Previously thought to be caused by different socialization and familial experiences, but research shows that those experiences can be very similar in homosexuals and heterosexuals. Genetic and biological mechanisms Research has found differences in brain structure and function between heterosexuals and homosexuals. Alright, so gender identity. So is one sense of being male or female. In most cases, our gender identities correspond to our biological sex, but not always. Gender dysphoria is gender that most people would assume they are. So if you identify as female, but you look like a male. Must persist for at least 6 months and must result in significant distress or dysfunction to meet a diagnosis criteria. Now, transgender hormone therapy is the use of hormones to make one's body look more like the opposite sex. So, continuing, Chaz Bono, a transgender male, is a well-known person who transitioned from female to male. Here, figure A, in the 1970s, the world knew Chaz as Chastity Bono, the daughter of the most famous entertaining duo, Sonny and Cher. Here, young Chastity is pictured with Sonny. And image B, later in life, Chaz transitioned to align his physical body with his gender identity. Continuing on, here's another example, actress Laverne Cox, who's openly transgender, is the first transgender actress to portray a transgender character on a regular television series. She is also an advocate for LGBTQ+ issues outside of her career, such as in this Ain't I a Woman speaking tour. So right here you can see her giving a speaking tour. Going on, we have emotion. Always fun. Emotion versus mood. So mood is the prolonged, less intense, is a prolonged, less intense affective state. It does not occur in response to something we experience and may not be consciously recognized or intentional. Now, emotion is a subjective state of being that we often use to describe our feelings. So if you're feeling mad, sad, happy, it is relatively intense and occurs in response to an experience. So you see a really sad movie, you're going to be emotionally sad. So it is consciously experienced and intentional. Now, components of emotion: physiological arousal, psychological appraisal, and subjective experiences. They are informed by experiences, backgrounds, and cultures. So, figure A, figure B, toddlers can cycle through emotions quickly, being A, extremely happy one moment and extremely sad the next. So, theories of emotion. We have the James Lange theory. Emotions arise from physiological arousal. So you see snake leads to your heart and respiration rate increase. That's physical response, and that causes a feeling of fear. The Cannon-Bard theory says that physiological arousal and emotional experience occur simultaneously, yet independently. So they occur at the same time, but are independent of each other. Why do I keep doing that? So you see a snake, you get that physiological arousal, and you feel fear at the same time, but they're independent of each other. Whereas the James Lange, it's, you see the snake, your physiological arousal, the heart and respiration rate increase leads to your feeling of fear. Cannon-Bard, they occur at the same time. Now, empirical findings, here we have that individuals with spinal cord injuries, or incapable of receiving autonomic feedback, could still experience emotion, but in some it was less intense. Now, suppression of facial expression of emotion lowered the intensity of emotions experienced. And these findings suggest that physiological arousal is not necessary to experience emotion, but it does increase the intensity. Continuing on with our theories here, we have the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. So, it states that emotions are composed of two factors, physiological and cognitive. Now, physiological arousal is interpreted in context, leading to the emotional experience. So you see a snake, you have physiological arousal and cognitive assessment of situation labels arousal as fear, and then you experience the fear. So they believed that physiological arousal is very similar across the different types of emotion, making cognitive assessment important. So palm sweating, heart racing, increased respiration rate, you could be scared or nervous. Now, the Lazarus's cognitive meditational theory is that emotions are determined by our appraisal of the stimulus. Unlike the Schachter-Singer model, the appraisal occurs before you label your emotion. Appraisal is immediate and unconscious. You don't have to consciously label something. So here we have the theory of emotion. Going through it again, nice chart. James Lange, you see the snake, all of these. First step is you see the snake, but next you have the physiological response, which leads to your fear. Cannon-Bard, again, see the snake, and you have the physiological response and emotion at the same time. They're independent of each other. It's not like they're grouped together. as you can see, they're not like, it doesn't say heart pounding, sweating, and fear, but they are occurring simultaneously. Now, the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory, you see the snake, you have the physiological response of your heart pounding, sweating, and then you label it as, you have a cognitive label of that reaction as I'm scared, which means that you have the emotion of fear. And finally, the Lazarus cognitive meditational theory, you see the snake, you appraise it, and then you register that you have fear, your heart's pounding, and you're sweating. So, going on. Now, the biology of emotions. So we have the limbic system. It is involved in mediating emotional response and memory. So you have the hypothalamus, which is involved in activation of the sympathetic nervous system, part of emotional reaction. And then you have the thalamus, the sensory relay center. Neurons project to both the amygdala and higher cortical regions for further processing. Now, the amygdala plays a role in processing emotional information and sending it to cortical structures, and the hippocampus integrates emotional experience with cognition. So here you can see, here's your hypothalamus, your amygdala, and then the hippocampus right behind it. So again, we talked about amygdala in one of the previous units, like recent ones. I think it was, I have no idea. The amygdala has been a primary target of research concerning the biological basis for emotions, especially fear and anxiety. The amygdala is composed of various subnuclei, including the basolateral complex and central nucleus. So what is the basolateral complex? It has dense connections with different sensory areas of the brain, and is critical for classical conditioning and attaching emotional value to learning processes and memory. Now, the central nucleus is involved in attention and has connections with the hypothalamus and various brainstem areas to regulate the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system's activities. So it regulates your autonomic nervous system and your endocrine system. And again, endocrine system is involved with the release of hormones, chemicals. All right, so facial expressions and recognition of emotions. So, cultural display rule, culturally specific standards that govern the types and frequencies of displays of emotions that are acceptable. So, individuals from the US express negative emotions like fear, anger, and disgust, both alone and in the presence of others. Now, individuals from Japan only express these emotions while alone. So, despite varying cultural display rules, recognition and production of facial expressions of certain emotions are universal. So, the cultural display rule, you know, in the US, it's a cultural thing for you to express fear, anger, and disgust, not just alone, but in presence of others. While in Japan, you're only supposed to express it when you're alone. You're not supposed to be very emotional. Next, we have the 7 universal facial expressions of emotion. So, these are universal. It doesn't matter what culture you're part of, what country, you're going to recognize these 7 emotions. So, happiness, smiling, surprise, you have sadness, fright, disgust, contempt, and then you have outright anger. No matter what culture you are going to recognize the emotion somebody's feeling if they are scowling at you really angrily, you know? Then we have the facial feedback hypothesis. So, does smiling make you happy, or does being happy make you smile? So the facial feedback hypothesis states that facial expressions are capable of influencing our emotions. Depressed individuals reported less depression after paralysis of their frowning muscles with Botox injections. So you have emotional stimulus, which leads to your facial expression. That leads to your physiological arousal, and that leads to your emotional experience. Again, physiological arousal would be something like heart rate increase, sweat, which then leads to your emotional experience. So I actually want to know what you guys think of that. Does smiling make you happy, or is it the fact that you are happy that's making you smile? And let me know which one you think it is, whether or not you think that your facial expressions are capable of influencing your emotions. Like if you're in a bad mood, do you think that smiling, like trying to give a big smile for a little bit, do you think that will influence your mood at all? Let me know in the comments if you guys want to. That is the end of chapter 10, Motivation and Emotion. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it, interesting and educational and maybe a little entertaining. Please leave a comment if you have any, critiques of the videos, what I can do to make them better for you guys. And yeah, my name is Prescott. One more time here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome. This is chapter 11 from the OpenStax Psychology 2E online textbook. My name is Prescot. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and so today we're going to be going through as much as we can of chapter 11 without going too long. I don't want you guys to get bored. So without further ado, let's get started. So personality. What makes two individuals have different personalities? Why are you and your friend, behave different ways? So first off, what is personality? Now, personality is the long-standing traits and patterns that propel individuals to consistently think, feel, and behave in specific ways. It comes from the Latin word persona, or a mask worn by an actor. And in ancient times, theatrical masks were used to represent/project a specific personality trait. So happy, sad, impatient, shy, fearful, curious, helpful. What characteristics describe your personality? And you guys can let me know in the comments if you so please. But I don't know about you, but these masks are terrifying. I do not want to go to a play with those. Historical perspectives. So Hippocrates in 370 BCE theorized that personality traits and human behaviors are based on 4 separate temperaments associated with 4 fluids or humors of the body. You had choleric, which is yellow bile from the liver. That's how you got your personality. Kind of gross. Melancholic was black bile from the kidneys. Sanguine is red blood from the heart, and phlegmatic is white phlegm from the lungs. Now, Galen believed both diseases and personality differences could be explained by imbalances in the humors and that each person exhibits one of the 4 temperaments. So it was a prevalent view for over 1,000 years and through the Middle Ages. So choleric, again, that's yellow bile from the liver, they were passionate, ambitious, and bold. Melancholic is reserved, anxious, and unhappy, again, black bile from the kidneys. Sanguine is joyful, eager, and optimistic, and phlegmatic is calm, reliable, and thoughtful. And I think it's funny that, these aren't particularly, phlegmatic doesn't sound like a compliment, and all these include bile from different parts of your body except blood from the heart, or phlegm, the stuff you cop up, phlegm. Phlegmatic, I don't know how to say that. But I think it's funny that sounds like such an insult, but then it means calm, reliable, and thoughtful. So that was the prevalent view for over 1,000 years. This is how you got your emotions. Or not emotions, your personality. My bad. We did emotions in the last video. So, phrenology. Franz Gall in 1780 proposed that the distances between bumps on the skull reveal a person's personality traits, character, and mental abilities. It is discredited for lack of empirical support. Gall developed a chart that depicted which areas of the skull corresponded to particular personality traits or characteristics. So you can see here from Hothersall in 1995, he had this nice picture of which areas of the skull led to personality traits. And here we have an 1825 lithograph that depicts Gall examining the skull of a younger woman. So that's supposed to be Gall. That's him examining the skull. Now, continuing with historical perspectives, Immanuel Kant in the 18th century agreed with Galen that individuals could be characterized into one of the 4 temperaments, so he developed a list of traits to describe the personality of each of the 4 temperaments. Now, Wilhelm Wundt in the 19th century suggested that personality could be described using 2 major axes, the emotional/non-emotional, which separated strong emotions, melancholic, choleric, from the weak emotions, so phlegmatic or sanguine, and then the changeable/unchangeable divided the changeable temperaments, so choleric and sanguine, from the unchangeable ones, melancholic and phlegmatic. So here we have unchangeable temperaments, changeable temperaments, and strong emotions, weak emotions. So again, here the strong, you have melancholic and choleric, and the weak, you have phlegmatic and sanguine. Meanwhile, the changeable temperaments are choleric and sanguine, and unchangeable are melancholic and phlegmatic. And you can read here the different personality traits that make up each one of these areas, each one of these personality types. Continuing on with historical perspectives, we have the psychodynamic perspectives from the 20th century, good old Freud. It's the first comprehensive theory of personality explaining both normal and abnormal behaviors, and proposed that unconscious drives influenced by sex, aggression, and childhood sexuality influence your personality. Now, neo-Freudians, so new Freudians, agreed that childhood experiences matter, but with less emphasis on sex, and focused on the social environment and effects of culture on personality. So, And this is another throwback, the levels of consciousness. So unconscious is the mental activity that we are unaware of and are unable to access. And according to Freud, we are only aware of a small amount, about 1/10 of our mind's activities, and most of it remains hidden from us in our unconscious. Now, unacceptable urges and desires are kept in our unconscious through repression. The information in our unconscious affects our behavior, although we are unaware of it. Again, unconscious, you're not conscious of it. Now, a Freudian slip is when Freud suggested that slips of the tongue, so saying a word you did not intend to say, are sexual/aggressive urges accidentally slipping out of your unconscious. And this actually happened to me just the other day. I was talking to somebody and I saw something else, and I don't want to get too into it, but I had a Freudian slip. I meant to say one word and I said another word that was like in my unconscious, but it was motivating me. So that's funny. I just had a Freudian slip the other day. All right, so the ID or id, ego, and superego. So Freud posited that personality results from effort to balance two competing forces. So 1, biological, aggressive, and pleasure-seeking drives, and 2, internal or socialized control over these pleasure-seeking drives. So Freud described this process as an interaction between 3 systems. And here you go, we can see right here, the superego, ego, and id. Remember, glacier. So id contains primitive urges for hunger, thirst, and sex. It is impulsive and instinctual, and it operates on the pleasure principle, so you seek immediate gratification. And the superego develops through interactions with others, learning social rules for right and wrong. A moral compass that tells us how we should behave based on rules, and it strives for perfection and judges behavior. So if you're not being perfect, you're not being moral, leads to feelings of pride or guilt. Now the ego or self attempts to balance the ID with the superego. It is the rational part of yourself, and it operates on the reality principle, helps the id satisfy desires in a realistic way. The part of the personality seen by others. So as you can see, can't see the superego, can't see the id. This isn't really the best chart for it, but the ego is the one that kind of determines your personality. It's one people see most clearly. So effects on personality: a balanced id and superego equals a healthy personality. Now, an imbalanced id and superego equals neurosis, or tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety disorders, or unhealthy behaviors. So here's a nice little chart. Your superego, very moral, kind of superhero brain. It's not right to do that. Your id's like the villain. It's very primal. It wants pleasure principle, wants to get what it wants right away. But your ego makes compromise between the two, so you can, accomplish what your ID wants in a realistic manner. So, defense mechanisms, and oh boy, there's a lot of these. Unconscious protective behaviors that work to reduce anxiety. It is used by the ego to restore balance between the id and superego, and Freud believed them to be used by everyone, but the overuse could be problematic. So let's get into this. So with denial is refusing to accept real events because they are unpleasant. For example, Kalia refuses to admit she has an alcohol problem, although she is unable to go a single day without drinking excessively. So that's denial. Displacement, transferring inappropriate urges or behaviors onto a more acceptable or less threatening target. During lunch at a restaurant, Mark is angry at his older brother but does not express it and instead is verbally abusive to his server. Projection, attributing unacceptable desires to others. For example, Chris often cheats on her boyfriend because she suspects he's already cheating on her. So these are not some good defense mechanisms. Rationalization is justifying behaviors by substituting acceptable reasons for less acceptable real reasons. So, Kim failed his history course because he did not study or attend class, but he told his roommates that he failed because the professor didn't like him. That's him trying to rationalize it for himself. The reaction formation, reducing anxiety by adopting beliefs contrary to your own beliefs. Nadia is angry with her coworker Beth for always arriving late to work after a night of partying, but she is nice and agreeable to Beth and affirms the partying as cool. So, next we have regression, or returning to coping strategies for less mature stages of development. After failing to pass his doctoral examination, Giorgio spends days in bed cuddling his favorite childhood toy. He's regressing back to his childhood state. Then we have repression, or the suppressing painful memories and thoughts. Lucia cannot remember her grandfather's fatal heart attack, although she was present. It's repressing. Then we have sublimation, or redirecting unacceptable desires through socially acceptable channels. So, for example, Jerome's desire for revenge on the drunk driver who killed his son is channeled into a community support group for people who have lost loved ones to drunk driving. So those are all those defense mechanisms. And if I went a little too fast, you can always pause the video and just go through, this is good. Each defense mechanism along with a good example. So, continuing on. Next, we have the stages of psychosexual development. So Freud theorized that children pass through 5 psychosexual stages. In each stage, pleasure-seeking urges, the id, are focused on a different erogenous zone or part of the body. Now, lack of proper nurturing and parenting during conflicts results in the person becoming stuck/fixated in that stage. So the oral stage is from birth to 1 year. The erogenous zone is the mouth. Your pleasure is from eating and sucking. Major conflict being weaned from bottle or breast. And adult fixation is smoking, overeating, or nail biting. Then we have the anal stage, which is 1 to 3 years, erogenous zone anus, pleasure from bowel and bladder movements, major conflict toilet training, adult fixation, anal retentive personality, they get stingy, stubborn, need for order and neatness, and anal expulsive personality, which is messy, careless, disorganized, prone to emotional outbursts. So let's see. Next, we have the phallic stage from 3 to 6 years. The erogenous zone is genitals, and the major conflict is the child feels a desire for the opposite sex parent and jealousy and hatred toward that same sex parent. So Oedipus complex for boys, desire for mother's attention, urge to replace father, afraid of being punished by father for these feelings, so castration anxiety. And then you have the Electra complex for girls, which is the desire for father's attention, urge to replace mother, and angry at mother for not providing them with a penis envy. The adult fixation is vanity and overambition. Next, we have the latency stage, which is the erogenous zone. There's none. Sexual feelings are dormant as children focus on school, friendships, hobbies, and engage with peers of the same sex. Then the genital stage is 12 plus. Erogenous zone is genitals. Sexual reawakening. Urges are redirected from parents to more socially acceptable partners. Now, Alfred Adler, individual psychology, focuses on our drive to compensate for feelings of inferiority. Now, inferiority complex is a person's feelings that they lack worth and don't measure up to the standards of others or of society. So social motives thought to be the force behind thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It placed focus on social connections during childhood development, believed happiness can be found in working together for the betterment of all, and viewed main goal of psychology to be to recognize the equal rights and equality of others, saw conscious processes as more important, and theorized that birth order shapes our personality. Adler identified 3 fundamental social tasks all individual must experience. So first, you have the occupational tasks or careers, then you have societal tasks or friendship, and finally you have love tasks like finding an intimate partner. So, continuing on. Erikson, his psychosocial theory of development is that personality develops throughout the lifespan. It emphasizes the importance of social relationships at each stage, and development of a healthy personality and sense of competence depend on successfully completing each of the 8 stages. Going on, we have Carl Jung. He did analytical psychology, which focused on working to balance conscious and unconscious thought. Carl Jung acknowledged the concept of a personal unconscious, but was also interested in exploring the collective unconscious. Now, collective unconscious is a universal version of personal unconscious, holding mental patterns or memory traces, which are common to all of us. And then there's archetypes, patterns that exist in our collective unconscious across cultures/societies. These are represented by universal themes in various cultures, reflecting common experiences of people around the world, and integration of unconscious archetypal aspects of the self seen as part of self-realization process. Now, persona is a mask that we consciously adopt, remember that from the beginning of the chapter, derived from conscious experiences in our collective unconscious, and a compromise between our true self and the self that society expects us to be. So hiding parts of the self that do not align with society's expectations, so like wearing a mask. And then this will be the last slide we do for this video. Next we have Carl Jung, extroversion versus introversion. Jung's most important contributions to the field of personality psychology was the idea of extroversion and introversion to explain different attitudes towards lights. So introverts, Energized by being alone, avoids attention, speaks slowly and softly, they think before speaking, stay on one topic, they prefer written communication, pay attention easily, and they are cautious. Now extroverts, they're energized by being with others, extro, being out there, out with others, seek attention, they speak quickly and loudly, think out loud, they jump from topic to topic, prefer verbal communication, they're distractible, and they also act first and think later. So guys, that's all I got for today, but I will see you for part 2, hopefully, of chapter 11 here. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it entertaining and educational. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you. Bye.